feels like a little while, but as soon as you come back, it feels pretty familiar. And about a month ago, when Bronwyn gave me a call and said, hey, we'd like you guys to maybe come and talk in chapel, it wasn't too hard to say yes. I was really looking forward to coming back. And it's fun to see some great teachers who I had a chance to sit in class with, and a few students that I know. And to all the pastors up there, thanks guys and gals for being here today. One thing I've learned about myself in the past 20 years since I sat here in chapel was something that maybe I wouldn't have expected. When I was a student, I was definitely someone who liked to follow the rules, and I felt pretty good about structure. And something that I've learned that will come out a little bit in our talk today is that I've learned that I actually appreciate a little bit more flexibility. And so when the topic came up, and Bronwyn said, we'd like to have you guys kind of talk about faith and vocation and family, I said, great. And then I thought, I'm not sure if I actually want to talk about exactly that. so there you go. And maybe that's being self-employed for the past 10 years. You start to think your own thoughts. But pretty quickly, I said, you know what? I want to talk about identity. And I thought, okay, well, how am I going to do that? What is the context that I'm going to provide for everybody today? And I said, okay, well, really, what I think about is how is it that each one of us finds an authentic identity in the digital age? And I thought, okay, I can work with that. And it's not too exciting of a title, but I thought I can connect. And before I jump in, I wanted to share with you the other two titles that I came up with and maybe why they didn't work. So the first one was actually the identity crisis of the Brontosaurus. So does anybody know, by show of hands here, what a Brontosaurus is? Probably most people. Well, I hate to... Thank you, sir. That was a big hand, Mr. Bishop. Thank you. So what's fascinating about that is that for the first half of the 20th century, the Brontosaurus was the most popular dinosaur worldwide. It was the most displayed. Like 60 feet long. It's in museums across the United States as well as some in Europe. And did you know that it actually doesn't exist? There is no such thing as a Brontosaurus. And not only that, they knew that there wasn't a Brontosaurus for decades before all the skeletons were changed to affect what it really is, and it's an Apatosaurus, which is simply another plant-eating dinosaur. So I threw that title out because I thought that's a little confusing, but what's interesting about this story, I think, in the digital age is just that, is that in today, when of course we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Pinterest, we have Snapchat, we have all these different ways in which we communicate with people, or people comment about us and who we are, I don't know that they always accurately reflect who our authentic self is. Much like we had this idea of the Brontosaurus, which actually never existed. So that was one title I got rid of, but I thought, okay, that helps me get on my journey of maybe what I'm going to talk about. And my second title that I came up with was Brand Aid is the New Band-Aid. Think about that one a little bit. So brand, we think of in a corporate sense. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I want to talk about the Band-Aid first. I have 3 kids, 9, 7, and 3. And one of the things I've experienced as a parent is much like I experienced when I was a kid, or when you guys were small children, is that mom and dad did a great job of taking care of almost anything that went wrong in my life with a Band-Aid, right? You come in, you fell off your bike, or your brother hit you, or whatever it may be, and mom and dad was there to pick you up, wipe you off a little bit, and stick on that Band-Aid. And in today's day and age, you know, it's a Cars Band-Aid, or whatever it may be, and everything was good. Well, what I would say is in today's day and age, as a young adult, or even an older adult, is that the Band-Aid doesn't always fix everything, and that actually it's the brand aid which can help in a situation. And so where I was going with that title is that in today's day and age, it's not just corporations who have a brand, an identity, it's individuals who have a brand. Each one of us has a much more public brand than any generation previously. And so all those two titles help lead me to say, you know what, let's talk a little bit about what it means to have an authentic identity in a very digital public age. Now, one of the things that I want to be clear with is that I don't stand before you today with specific answers. I've found in my 39 years that a lot of times the answers feel elusive. But one thing I have learned is I can do a much better job now about trying to find the right questions to ask that help really move that journey forward. And so today, what I want to do is share with you what I think are some of the questions we should ask ourselves on that journey of trying to find our authentic identity. The first one of the things that we're going to talk about is developing some flexibility and resilience in our identity. And I have a few stories that I want to share with that. But before I do that, I actually want to ask you guys a question to kind of kick things off. And my question is this, is take 5 seconds and think about, when you think of identity or brand on the individual level, who are those people throughout history who come to mind? And not the 5th or 6th name, but what's the first name or two that kind of pops into your head as having a truly transcendent identity across time? All right. Now, I'm not going to call anybody, but who's going to just yell out a few names for me?
Gandhi.
Excellent. That was one of my first ones, too. Who else? She's about, what, like 21? We'll see if she's transcendent, but have another comment. Who else?
Martin Luther King.
Excellent. That was another one I thought of, too. Oh, got it. So we got Gandhi, we got Miley Cyrus, and we got Martin Luther. Did you say Martin Luther King?
Martin Luther King Jr.
Martin Luther King Jr. Who else?
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. Excellent. Yep. Very good. Christ. All right. Beethoven. Excellent. All right. How about some women? How about Mother Teresa? How about Queen Elizabeth? So it's pretty easy when you think about it to come up with a few names. And interestingly enough, the first names that people came up with, other than Miley Cyrus, I was thinking the same thing. Is when you think of Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., people like that really have an identity and a brand that goes beyond being an individual. And again, part of my argument this morning is that we all need to think a little bit that way because we are very public in our identities. And what I like about using a few of those as an example is that many of them, particularly when we look at a Nelson Mandela or a Martin Luther King Jr. or a Gandhi, had to overcome quite a lot to become that transcendent identity. They faced tremendous problems. So let's take a look at Nelson Mandela for a second. He was in prison for 26 years before he became president of South Africa, I think it was 2 years after he was released from prison. So think about the resilience and the flexibility, which I mentioned previously, that he had to develop in his identity to stay true to who he felt he needed to be successful later in life. So let's unpack this idea of flexibility and resilience in identity. And what we're going to do is, I'm a very visual person, and so when I use examples, I want to try and have something tangible that you guys can kind of take with you. And so the first example we're going to use is Velcro. So who here as a kid had Velcro shoes? Pretty much everyone. I don't know how I'd get them on my 3-year-old's feet anymore if I had the time. Well, real quickly, the story of Velcro goes like this. In 1948, a guy named George, who was a Swiss inventor and mountaineer, was out walking his dog. I don't know what kind of dog he had, but I think it was a long-haired dog. Because the thing that he always struggled with was that dog came back with lots of burrs in its fur. And he got really frustrated with it. And he'd be there combing them out every day, trying to get rid of it. And finally he said, he's like, I'm a scientist. I need to figure out what's going on here. And so he cut off some of his dog's fur that had the burrs in it, and he put it under a microscope. And what he found was that the burrs were formed kind of like fish hooks, and that the dog's fur, long like that, tended to lay over like a loop, and the fish hook would hook onto the loop of the fur, and that's why they were so hard to get out. Pretty simple, right? Something that God created in nature, and now it's become ubiquitous. It's in like 17 different injuries, everything from kids' shoes to spaceships. Pretty fascinating when you think about the flexibility of a simple tool like Velcro, made in nature, and all the different uses it has. And so I like the example of a guy out on a walk with his dog, determining this substance that he can create that he calls Velcro. And now we can use it in all kinds of different applications. And what I like about it is that I think Velcro represents that ability of, when we apply it to the idea of an identity, of being very flexible, but also resilient. Because the thing that you find with kids' shoes and Velcro is that the shoes wear out well before the Velcro does. It lasts and lasts and lasts. Otherwise, they wouldn't also use it in applications in space. So that's my example for a little bit of flexibility and resilience, is remember Velcro and that first pair of shoes you had long ago. The second thing I want to talk about as we think about identity are what I call the 5 steps to identity stewardship. And the 5 things that I think about in my own life are faith, family, community, vocation, and fun. And I think those 5 things are key things that I want to think about, not just over a long period of time, but really day in and day out. They help give me some direction, and they help kind of steward me along the way of my journey. Again, I want to kind of give you a visual example of how the idea of 5 things like that, again, faith, family, community, vocation, and fun, can kind of come together to create just the right mix from an identity standpoint. And so we're going to do that by looking at ketchup and mustard. So first of all, by a show of hands, who likes ketchup better than mustard? All right, who likes mustard better than ketchup? I'm a mustard guy. I think the ketchup people won on this one. I'll say it right there, I'm a mustard guy. Well, it's really interesting. Ketchup and mustard started or were developed around the same time, around the turn going from the 19th to the 20th century. So I guess before that, I don't know what people use for condiments, at least in the United States, but they've been around for a little over 100 years. And what's fascinating is that for a period of time, they kind of ran parallel. You see, there was really only one kind of ketchup and only one kind of mustard. But then came Grey Poupon and 50 other kinds of mustard after that. And now, if you go into Lannis' supermarket and you walk down the mustard and the ketchup aisle, you'll see that there's like 1,000 different varieties of mustard. There's sweet mustard and spicy mustard and bitter mustard and every other kind of mustard you can come up with. But if you look really closely, there's really only a couple kinds of ketchup. And there's a reason for that. There's actually 5 reasons for that. So I got another question for you. And this is for all the cooks and the chefs out there. Do you guys know the 5 classifications of taste? I'll give you one. One is sweet. Can someone yell out another one?
Sour.
Sours?
Bitter.
Bitter?
Spicy.
Salty.
Salty?
Savory.
Savory is one, but do you know what the name for savory is? Umami. That's a funny name. That's the 5. So we got sweet, we got salty, we got sour, we got bitter, and we got umami. Now, umami is savory, so it's like a really savory soup or really good soy sauce, okay? Now, what's really fascinating about ketchup, which quite frankly, since I'm a mustard guy, I don't really think it tastes that great, but it is one of the few substances on earth that has all 5 taste flavors. Fascinating. And this isn't coming from me, I promise you, I didn't make this stuff up. This is actually, there is actually a society out there that works with all these different food companies who develops all this stuff to figure out the right blends of like what Coke should be like and what Pepsi should be like and what ketchup should be like. Well, they get this panel of experts out there, and they have to rate food based on all these different attributes. And Heinz ketchup has an equal balance of all 5. So it's considered umami, right? It's got all 5 together. That's why ketchup tastes the same, and really there's not a lot of variety, because it has the right mix of sweet and salt and bitter and sour and savory. It's the umami. And so one of the things that for me, when I think about having stewardship of my identity over time, is I want to find that balance. And what I like about using ketchup as an example is ketchup isn't the most exciting thing. It's not the most glamorous thing. It's steady. And it has the right balance to create a flavor that lasts over the course of 100 years. And so when I think about identity, I want to use my same 5 things. And I want to work in faith and family and community and vocation and fun. All of those things into my identity. All right. I want to talk a little bit about authenticity. Let's unpack that a little bit. The way I like to describe authenticity is saying it needs to be something that resonates, and resonates really deep. Now, I'm going to use 2 stories to kind of talk about how I find authenticity. And the first one is a music example. I'm a music lover, as I bet many of you are. And I've been fortunate that I've been to a lot of different concerts over time. So just to give you some perspective, I was trying to think about, all right, what are some of those concerts that I've been to? So I've been to everything from Newsboys to Led Zeppelin, Coldplay to Third Day, and for those of you over 40, I've been to Glad, and what else did I say? Led Zeppelin reunion. So only if you're over 40, you maybe have a chance to see either Glad or Led Zeppelin. But I love going to a concert that really connects with me. The last one we went to was a summer ago, and it was actually Coldplay down in the city. And it was awesome. It was so much fun. It just really connected with me. We had a great time. The music was wonderful, and we had a great group of friends to go with. And it's one of those things where you leave and you're pumped. Like, that was a lot of fun. It really resonated. So that's my first story. Is something that really connects with you deeply, and you have fun. The other story is something that really challenged me in my life. And that goes back to when I was 21. When I was 21, like most people, I'd gone away to college. I was having a great experience. I was in the middle of I guess it would have been my junior year. And so I don't even know exactly what it was, but I just really felt a calling that I needed to make a change in my life. And that even meant like I needed to take a break from my studies. I was going to finish, but I really felt like God was saying, you need to do something different. And so after a lot of thought and prayer and angst, quite frankly, I entered the YES program, which is a part of Eastern Mennonite Missions. It's a program for youth, and it gives you an opportunity first to do some study of the scriptures with the team, and then also to do some outreach. And so I studied in Baltimore, and we did outreach in the country of Wales. It was a great experience, and that's a story for another day. But I want to share with you one experience I had when we were in training in Baltimore. The way training works is that they bring together 4 or 5 teams of young adults before you go out all over the world. And you get to live together and study together and work together over the course of about 3 months. And it's very multicultural. So there was about 25 of us in the house. And I would say there's probably about 10 countries represented and probably 4 different continents. So it was a real mixture of people. It was great, and there was also some times where it was challenging. Well, one of the things for me, being a white middle-class American that I learned, is very quickly we had very different backgrounds. and very different stories. And one of the things that I felt challenged with was saying, is my testimony, is my identity, is my faith good enough to really be something that needs to be shared when we do outreach? There's guys from Africa and Central America and South America and Europe who have stories that feel vastly different and more powerful than mine. And then one day, one of my friends, Eddie Cano, who's from Mexico City, sat me down with a couple of the other guys and he said, I need to tell you a little bit more about my story so that you understand how authentic your story is. And what Eddie told me was very moving. He said, look, what you don't know about me is you know a little bit about my later life. But what you don't know about me is when I was little, I was a street kid. And we had a song that we used to sing, and he sang a little bit of the song. And it was a song saying, we know that we're not worth anything because we're a street kid and we don't have a family. And it was incredibly powerful. And it was a part of his identity. And what he shared next was, again, the rest of the story that I knew, is that a pastor's family had invited him in and fed him and clothed him and helped him get education. And he grew up to be a great guy. And today he's a pastor in Mexico City. But what was amazing is he said, guys, what you don't understand about your faith identity is this. When that family gave me something, clothes on my back, food, a place to get educated, and a family to be with, there wasn't a big jump to develop faith, to become a Christian, to believe in the power of God in Jesus Christ. He said it was a simple step because what they gave me changed my life. And he said, guys, that doesn't feel that powerful to me. He's like, your story is so much more powerful. And we were blown away. And we're like, what do you mean? Your story is incredible. And he said, you have everything. You have family. You have resources. You have opportunity. And yet you get up in the morning and you choose that part of your identity is your faith in Jesus Christ. That was really powerful. It changed my life. It helped me understand that I had a story to tell. That each one of you has a story to tell that is incredibly powerful. That yes, Christ first chose us, but that every day we choose him anew. And that is a powerful choice. It's a wonderful choice. It's an authentic choice. One of the things that really came out of that for me was helping me understand the story that I had to tell. It was just as powerful, just as wonderful as Eddie's story. It doesn't diminish his story. I think in many ways it enhances the fact that we can come together and be friends and share and encourage one another with stories that are so different. But when I leave here today, part of my challenge for you, an opportunity for you, is to remember that you do have an authentic identity to find and to discover, and that it is powerful. And that I really encourage you to find those 5 things: faith, family, community, vocation, fun, or maybe something else to substitute in there for you, that help you find that umami and that balance of your identity. But I hope that you can really own it. I just want to close with a Bible verse that has been powerful for me. And what's funny about it is it was actually our class verse back in 1993. And that verse is from Jeremiah 29:11. I'm going to paraphrase it today for you. But essentially what it says is the Lord says that he has a plan for you. A plan not to harm you, and a plan to give you a hope and a future. And I really believe that. And 20 years on from when we learned that verse and decided to pick it as a class verse, it has really resonated with me. It's been a real authentic verse in my life. And so today, thank you for the opportunity to speak for a few minutes and to share with you a little bit about my journey. And the journey that I believe we're all on is to really find and embrace that authentic identity that resonates with bless. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Chad, for sharing your story with us. And it's my prayer, too, that each one of us will be able to find our authentic identity in Christ. And I think these visuals are really helpful, too, of Velcro and of ketchup and mustard and finding our identity in a digital age. Just an encouragement again at lunch. Sit with your pastor, and if you don't have a group, I want to hear the phrase. I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the year we had that chapel where we were encouraged to say these words, you have a place at the table. So if you see someone who doesn't have a table to sit at, I want to hear those words as you call out to your friends. You have a place here at this table to sit with me. So let's really enjoy our fellowship here at lunch and all throughout today. Classes begin in 5 minutes.
Well, okay, it doesn't have a big flower on the front, but it is that kind of color.